Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about educational equity in practice. We're going to cover what is educational equity, why we should care about it, and how we're going to improve it.
Across the country, states are raising academic standards for all students to make sure they're ready for college and the workforce when they graduate and can compete with students around the world. High, consistent standards motivate students to succeed, but every child needs something different. Some need help with reading or spelling. Others struggle with fractions. And some are great writers, but struggle with algebra. Every child deserves the best education we can give them, but too many students do not have what they need to succeed. Incredibly, about 40% of school districts in America don't even offer preschool. Almost 1 in 5 African American students and slightly fewer Latino students attend dropout factories. In many states, students of color and English learning students are more likely to attend schools with high percentages of inexperienced teachers. Students with disabilities make up 12% of all high school students, but only 2% of the students who take an AP class. So it's not surprising that there are achievement gaps between white students and students of color, and between students with and without disabilities. But we can change this. We can give every child a fair chance, making sure all schools have the resources they need to help all of their students succeed. And that means providing additional resources for students who are struggling. Let your state and local elected officials know that you support high academic standards and want them to be implemented in a way that ensures every child succeeds.
Equity means making sure every student has the support they need to be successful. Equity in education requires putting systems in place to ensure that every child has an equal chance for success. That requires understanding the unique challenges and barriers faced by individual students or by a population of students and providing additional supports to help them overcome those barriers. Scholars identify two aspects of equity in education. First one as fairness, which means ensuring that person and social circumstances do not prevent students from achieving their academic potential. And the second one, inclusion, which means setting a basic minimum standard of education that is shared by all students regardless of background, personal characteristics, or location. Now let's look at the current status in data. There are many reasons that account for the educational inequity. Here are some main causes: student race, family income, school locations, teachers' quality, and school funding conditions. This picture here shows average high school GPA of students from different area and different family income. We can see that students living in suburban areas or coming from low-income families generally perform worse in high school. Then we can see this picture of an on-time graduation rates from public high school divided by race. Black students, disabled students, and students from low-income families have lower on-time graduation rates compared to others. The last picture here we see is the percentage of classes taught by teachers lacking skills. High-poverty schools and rural area schools are lacking more quality teachers compared to the other schools. Now let's talk about educational equity in practice. As a school, institute, or college, how do we implement the change? The first thing is to set up standards. There are 3 standards that we should consider. First one is monetary resource. Is school funding equitable? Do schools serving populations with greater needs have access to the resources they need to effectively serve these students? The second one is academic standards. Questions are like, are all students held to high performance standards? How are standards modified to accommodate students with special needs? And the third one would be academic content and support. That is, do all students have access to high-quality content that fits their educational needs? What supports are provided for students who have extra help to achieve academic goals? Do all students have highly qualified teachers who are well prepared to meet their needs? To implement this change in organizations, we want to follow the UN's change model. The first thing to do is to unfreeze, that is, make sure every employee understands the necessity to encourage educational equity. And then we'll set standards and get continued feedbacks from our teachers and students. Then we'll refreeze to make educational equity as a culture of the organization. To understand the necessity, that brings us to a question: why should we care about education equity? Well, obviously, this will help ensure that all children have access to a more personalized and high-quality education, and that will make our school more competitive, and then, eventually, employment and economics in the states will grow. To implement this change plan, there are 3 things that we can do. First is to hire an equity and diversity director. When an organization has explicit leadership to champion equity and diversity, the initiative will come from a position of authority and have the follow-through needed to build momentum and long-term success. The second step we can take is move towards standards-based grading. Moving this practice will focus on learning and student growth rather than having the student identify with a number or letter. This practice will level the playing field for students to focus on a journey of learning, not a final grade. The final step we can take is identify and provide systematic help to those who fall behind at school and reduce year repetition. When we look at school and district data as an average, it may show that the school is on par or successful. However, look deeper at each student who is struggling. We cannot look at the whole picture of data without looking at parts. Every student counts no matter the standing of the school. To build an equitable school culture, there are a few steps that we can take. The first one is to prioritize a shared vision and language. That is, make sure the adults in the building are employing the same language and concepts when it comes to anti-racism work. This allows for individuals to access shared values and concepts when attempting to have brave conversations with their students and colleagues. Terms such as implicit bias, structural racism, and microaggregations should be explicitly taught, discussed, and defined within context of the local school community and history. The second step we can take is practice a culture of microaffirmations. In one study conducted by BUILD, an organization founded to mentor students of color in the sciences, microaffirmations are described as affirmations that people of your culture and ethnicity are important contributors to advancing knowledge in this field. BUILD's research found that the practice of microaffirmation directly correlates with students' intention to persist in a field. The last thing we want to talk about is resistance. Where there is a change, there will be resistances. First of all, employees of the organization could just fall into the contentment house, saying that I'm happy about where we are now, our school are performing well, we're number 1 in this district. And there also can be resistance from the teachers complaining about the increasing burdens in training and teaching. Last, we can also have resistance from our parents. There will be several parental concerns such as, my kid is just too small for talking about racism. So that's all for today's educational equity discussion. Thank you for your time. Any questions?